Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Welcome to the Dukes of Gaming podcast.
And it's good to be here. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Dukes of Gaming podcast. You already know it's your boy Thomas, the Duke of Procrastination. And you already know we have some great topics for you this week. But first, let me introduce my fellow Dukes of Gaming. First and foremost, returning to us, we have the newly moved Duke of Design. What's going on, Ben? How are you this week, man?
Very good. I'm finally settling into the new place. So I'm very happy to be back talking games with you guys.
Good stuff. We love the setup. I love the bookshelf.
Thank you.
I love the sliding door. Fancy.
Yeah.
I like the
barn door.
the tiny chair behind you. It's only a few feet away, but
It's called
very
a
small.
My
dad
son's
chair.
rocking chair.
Exactly.
No, it is tiny in real life. It's my son's rocking chair. But I'm happy. I was telling you guys I can finally have all my game collection out and my Blu-rays you can see back here and all this good stuff. So that's it's a breath of fresh air. I feel like I can finally be myself. I don't have to hide my games in the closet anymore like I was doing before.
We're looking to see that bookshelf grow for sure.
Yeah, oh yeah.
For sure. And of course, we have the Duke of Nostalgia. What's going on, Taylor? How are you this week?
I am doing very well, other than the fact that I have been diagnosed with strep. I don't know. I don't feel bad. I don't have any sickness, but I got tested the other day for COVID and strep, and I came back positive for strep. Don't know why, don't know how, but I have to take a bunch of pills.
Strep
I'm
sucks.
great.
I
I'm
had
great.
that this year. That's so you're not feeling anything.
Not at all. Not at all.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Good to hear you had a good week.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have the busy Duke of Education. What's going on, Alfredo? How are you doing this week?
I'm doing great, especially since it is Spooktober, and I am pretty much doing real good on my commitment to watch a new scary movie every single night in October.
Nice.
Yeah.
Alfredo, where are you finding the scary movies worth watching?
I'm okay. I didn't say they were all good, first of all, and I didn't say they were worth watching. So let's get
shit.
that
Okay,
out of the way, you know. So definitely got some bad ones. I'm going through some different streaming. So I got Hulu, I got HBO, and I got Prime Video. Most of them are coming from Prime Video and looking at those star ratings to see how good they are.
Yeah.
So discovered a pretty good new one that I've never seen before called The Collector and the Collection, which is the sequel. It's actually a lot better than I thought. So that was good. And then yesterday I watched Halloween. So
Busty Babe 1012 in the chat did say you need to watch Teeth.
I haven't
Teeth.
heard of
Oh,
Teeth
no.
is
They also said it's terrible, so I'm already
It's
No,
in.
yeah.
I'm in.
terrible in like the European way, where it's
I mean,
really good.
yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I mean, terrible, good, it doesn't matter to me as long as it's a movie, a scary, quote unquote, scary
Oh,
movie.
it's scary. Oh,
Yeah,
it'll
that's the only
scare
requirement.
the teeth out of you.
But yeah, doing great.
Good D. Well, I might have to play a scary game this month. I've never really been a Halloween person because I was born in a Christian house, so I wasn't really allowed to for a long time.
Technically, you are, aren't you? Technically,
You're scary?
Metroid Dread, the game.
I guess that's true.
No,
I guess that's true.
Can I recommend one,
ahead.
Thomas?
For sure.
I was cleaning out my closet today and I came across Alien for the PS4. That is
Oh, Isolation?
that is a great Alien Isolation is such a good game. I
never finished it. I played like a good 4 hours of it and never finished it. I might have to do that this month. That's a
If you
great
have
suggestion.
the camera for your PS4 plug that in, play
Oh,
that
yeah.
game.
Oh,
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
about that.
It picks up your voice, the sound, and
Yeah.
Oh wow.
yeah, it's great.
It is
That's a great
wonderful.
suggestion.
Yeah, I feel like that game falls off in the end, so I understand why you didn't finish it. There's like a good couple hours before the final 2 hours or so that is just kind of boring.
Yeah.
But God, that's just such a damn good game. We need a sequel to that game.
It really was a great game.
For sure. That was one because that was the point in time where there wasn't that many great games coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like
Especially horror, yeah.
Yeah,
Right, especially horror. So it really did stand out, especially since it's not like, Silent Hill or one of
Mhm.
these, typical horror, kind of games.
We're
It's
definitely
big
gonna
and
have to do a horror-esque, but what's the best horror video game episode
Ooh.
one of these days?
It's
Mm.
Pac-Man. It's Pac-Man, the OG.
Well,
Can't
besides
beat the original.
Pac-Man, because that one's would be the obvious
Right.
pick,
Yeah.
I
Well, then
never
it's Miss
thought-
Pac-Man. So
Yeah, yeah.
sorry.
Okay, you're right.
There,
You're right.
there are
Here's to
ghosts.
being a-
There are ghosts, aren't there?
There are, yeah.
Are.
Yeah, it's survival.
So what have we been playing this week? Should we get right into the main game, or should we kind of go into, just kind of maybe the smaller games we play?
I can warm us up since we're already talking about horror games. I'll warm us up. Alan Wake. I've been playing Alan Wake.
Okay.
Ooh.
The PS5 remaster. Yes.
Nice.
I never played Alan Wake. I had never played any Remedy game before Control, which I think we've discussed. I really enjoyed Control. I love the aesthetic of that game, and the gameplay was pretty good as well. Pretty hard. I think that game was a little too hard, to be honest.
Towards
it was like
the
a
end, for
little,
sure.
yeah. It was
Oh,
it was
yeah,
unenjoyable
for
at
sure.
points because of the difficulty. But overall, I really enjoyed Control, and obviously, Control is kind of tied in with Alan Wake now with the second DLC, which includes him. So yeah, I had never played Alan Wake before, so I jumped on the chance to experience a new Remedy game or an old Remedy game afresh, and I'm enjoying it, playing with my wife, and it's a very story-driven game, so it's a good game to play together. Very linear. But it's still a 360 game. It's
Mhm.
just a remaster. It's not a remake. It looks pretty good, though in some areas it's obviously showing its age, especially in the animations, in the way generally that it controls. I think it's a not particularly fun game to play, and that's what's hanging my wife up a lot as we're playing it. It's got fairly straightforward mechanics where you have to like shine light on the monsters and you have to shine it on them for a certain duration so that their darkness shield disappears and then you can properly attack them.
Mhm.
But it's just kind of clunky. You can't aim unless you're like shining your flashlight, and when you're shining your flashlight, you're burning flashlight juice batteries. So it just all feels a little squirrely and haphazard. The story is pretty fun. I like the characters, but I would say that it's not like particularly surprising in the way that I found Control to be, where I felt that Control was really something unique. And even though it was very Lynchian, like Control is Lynchian, but Alan Wake is Twin Peaks. Just
Yeah.
it's just too on the nose. But I'm still enjoying it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Also, the other big thing about Alan Wake, I don't really find it scary at all. It's kind of like unsettling, and it's atmospheric and it's bizarre, but it's not scary. And I was kind of wanting something that was going to be scary, so that's a little disappointing to me.
I think Half-Life is scary.
Yeah, right, especially like Half-Life 2, Ravenholm,
Yeah.
that whole thing. Yeah, totally.
I haven't played those, but I have played Alan Wake, and I played it a lot later than its release. Maybe like 3, maybe 4 years ago. And Ben, have you ever played like the classic Resident Evil games, like Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2, not the remakes, but the classic ones where with the tankish controls?
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of that a little bit, and even with the same critique you gave of it's not really scary. It fit the bill of like Resident Evil type scary, where like it's that type of atmosphere, but it's not scary. It's not like an Outlast game, or it's not Aliens Isolation scary. Like it's
Or
just
Resident Evil 7 scary.
right. It's
yeah.
more of like, oh, like it's time to kill zombies kind of feel. So that's kind of how I landed with it. But even playing it just 3-4 years ago, Alan Wake, it seemed like it didn't really age that well as far as controls go, and it sounds like the remaster didn't really do anything to help that. Is that about right?
I can't say if there were changes because I never played the original, so I can't say definitively. But like I said, I mean, when I play it, I am like, okay, this is an Xbox 360 game for sure. It's not, it's not like smooth and responsive and snappy the way that I would expect a modern third person shooter to be. That said, it's running at 60 frames per second and everything. The textures are upscaled and all that good stuff, so it looks good.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't think they. If I had to guess, I don't think they'd done significant gameplay tweaks.
Yeah. Someone made a really good point in that Resident Evil does have some moments where it is scary, like the refrigerators in Resident Evil 4. They have like some scary moments, but just thinking back on Alan Wake, I don't remember any time where I was like, "Ugh, like this is scary or spoopy."
Yeah, I'm only through the first 2 episodes and some change, I think. I'm not sure how long the game is, but it's also very much, you can see Remedy's evolving through their games, where Alan Wake like has this episodic structure where it's clearly wanting to be presented like a TV show, and then they went to Quantum Break where they like just did a TV show
It was a TV
in
show,
addition
right.
to the game.
And it was bad. People say. I cannot verify.
I
I've
can't
heard mixed-
either, but I want to play it
I've
now.
heard mixed things. I've heard very mixed things about Quantum Break because I feel like people just didn't like the TV aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's what
I've heard
too.
nothing bad about the game, the actual game.
Well, real quick, I want to give a shout out to Source 1212. Thank you for following us just now. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
You're the best. You're the Duke of following us right now.
It switches
Right
every
now.
time someone follows us, but currently, that's you. You're special.
Anything else you've been playing, Ben?
No, that's it for me.
So you're interested, Ben,
Yeah,
but me, Taylor, and Alfredo have been playing the newly released Metroid Dread. A game, I think 19 years in the making. I'd like to say.
Too long of a time. Too long of a time.
The 5th game
It's-
in one of the most important franchises in video games.
I watched a video about like the lore of Metroid recently because I'm trying to remember it because I played the original Metroid on the NES and I've recently went back and played Super Metroid, and I'm just the lore is just nonsense, but it is the aesthetic, the storytelling weirdness of Metroid is so nice. It's so weird and sci-fi. I like it. I like it a lot.
See, I'm someone who's never played Metroid at all, so this is my first Metroid game. But I thought the beginning of the game did a pretty good job at like giving me a little plot hook, basically telling me
Yeah.
the bare minimum that I need to understand what's kind of going on. Like, you're the bounty hunter, and there's this X-Parasite. This is what this is. Like, basic information. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
let's do this.
I have a pretty decent history with Metroid. I mean, I played the Prime games, even though the Prime games, I don't know if they're considered canon per se.
They are. Yeah, they are.
They take place in between, I believe, the first and second Metroid games, right? Like the Metroid original on
They
NES.
take place in a strange space that
Yeah.
doesn't make sense in the timeline, but does technically fit.
Right.
It's very odd how they've squeezed those games in.
So technically, this is the third game in a trilogy. Is that right?
It's the 5th game. So the first
Okay.
one's Metroid on NES. I'm sorry, on NES. Then Metroid 2 on Game Boy, and then Super Metroid.
Super
on
Metroid?
Su-
Okay.
Yeah, Super
Metroid, yeah.
Metroid on SNES, and then Metroid Fusion
Oh god.
on.
Yep. And then Metroid Dread.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I played the first Metroid, which was Metroid Zero Mission. That's on Game Boy. That's a remake of the original NES. That's my introduction. I didn't realize that's the literal first game in the series. I just thought it was a new Game Boy game when I was a kid. But that's the first game chronologically, and then Metroid Fusion, and then Super Metroid. So
Speaking of that, can I just say so far, and this is playing off what you said, Alfredo. Metroid Dread has simplified how many years of lore? A lot of years of confusing, nonsensical lore. They have simplified it all into one easy to swallow package. It all of a sudden makes sense. All of Metroid's lore makes sense now,
Just
and
like
I
Kingdom
have to
Hearts.
give.
Just saying,
I
it's
don't know about
simplest.
that.
Kingdom Hearts finds its way in this podcast every single episode without fail. I
I'm
love it
just
though.
saying,
I love it though.
No,
love
I
it, though.
I think Metroid Dread really has made the lore of Metroid digestible, which is important for I think a series that will and should remain around for a long, long time. It's not as easy to. It's not as attach. You can't attach yourself to it as easily as like
Oh, yeah.
uh, Mario or even I was gonna say Halo. Halo's lore makes much more sense just right off the bat. Metroid's is weird. It almost speaking of topical things, it's almost Dune level sci-fi. It's just bizarro shit. But I think it's all starting to come together in Dread, and I like that. It's
Yeah.
it's for the common folk now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I would say Metroid is more alien in terms of like aliens, like those, like the Ridley Scott movie. Like,
Yeah.
it's more that than Halo.
Oh yeah.
I think it's more ominous, it's more mysterious. So it hasn't had a movie or anything like that. I think it had a couple mangas, but we really have only had the games to tell us the stories.
And those mangas are impossible to
Yeah.
find. They don't even have PDFs.
I
Yeah.
want them.
Jeez.
Because I love the world of Metroid. Because
It's-
we've been given so little of it, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So this is the first game in, as far as even just the Metroid franchise, I think since 2016?
Yeah.
Or
I think it's been a
2017
couple
maybe?
years, yeah.
Since Samus Returns.
Yeah.
What are y'all thoughts on this game in terms of like, how do you like it as a game? You take out the Metroid, aspect, the history. As a game, how do you feel about it?
As a game,
As a game.
this is one of my favorite games.
How far are you in also, Taylor?
I am past the third boss.
Okay.
Okay.
How many worlds is
Um,
that? Like biomes?
2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So far, it has filled me with this childlike competitive spirit I haven't had in a long time, where I have to keep playing. I used to play on arcade games a lot when I was a kid, and I love Metroidvanias because of that feel of you just trying over and over again without the penalty of putting a quarter in.
Yep.
Right.
And Metroid Dread is the perfect balance to me of absolute hard nonsense along with enough hand-holdy guiding you the right direction. When the game teaches you how to play the game correctly, you feel like the coolest motherfucker in the world. When I beat the second boss, the big crawling acid spitting monster,
Scorpion dude.
the scorpion dude, when
Yeah.
I beat that guy, it wasn't that long. It didn't take me that long. It took me maybe 20-30 minutes to beat. But it went from me entering into that arena and just losing immediately. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. To the next time I came back and I said, "Let me try this." And in 3-4 attempts, I was able to defeat the boss. It was it was almost musical. It just dragged me along so perfectly. I love this game. I am addicted to how fun it is, how well it takes that Metroidvania style and simplifies it but keeps it hard. They've balanced this game so well. It blows my mind how stepping into this game, you're really immersed. It's still the simple Metroid that I know from like the SNES and NES, where it's 2D side scrollers, but all those little extra button presses you can do that take you into this 2.5D world, they don't feel out of place here. They don't feel like shoehorned in. They feel fluid. They feel like you're actually playing the game, and you're not being taken out of any moments doing it. You really feel kind of badass playing this game, and I really like this. I really like the feeling I'm getting playing this game.
Well said. I love it too. I've been playing it. I'm maybe a little. I think I'm the least far compared to you two. I know Alfredo's the farthest.
Probably.
I just got to the second biome. And after I beat that boss you were talking about, that's when I knew I was like, yeah, this game is amazing. Because I had that same feeling. And the other feeling that I had, it brought me back to when I was a kid playing Metroid Fusion and Zero Mission. And when you beat a boss and you get that music and you get the new power up, it's the feeling that I don't like. Other games do it, but I forgot how good Metroid makes you feel when you beat a boss. It's really understated. Like I really love this game and just comparing it to the older ones, because Super Metroid's still my favorite. I have to beat this game before I even rationalize whether it competes with that. Super Metroid is my favorite because that had the biggest view of any Metroid game.
Yeah.
You can see you can see so much. On the Game Boy games, Fusion and Zero Mission, they're great, but you can only see so much because it's the Game Boy. Such a small screen. This being on Switch, this is like even when you're on handheld mode, it's still so much of the screen you can see.
You mentioned the music and like the little motif that plays when you get an upgrade.
Right.
I don't even notice that. And I used to notice that all the time in like Super Metroid. It's very much video gamey where you're like do 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 do.
Yeah.
You've done the thing. You've opened the treasure chest. In this one, I feel like I am in Samus's shoes. I'm so focused. They have somehow these game designers have focused me entirely into my mission.
Yeah.
Almost effortlessly, I have to do this. I'm not even paying attention to all the little extra music or anything. I genuinely don't remember what any of the music in this game sounds like because I've been just so focused on completing my mission.
Tunnel vision.
Tunnel vision. It's ridiculous.
Alfredo, what are your thoughts on this game?
My thoughts on this game. Okay. I'm in the I got to the third biome. I'm currently looking to get into the fourth biome, so I'm a little farther than you guys. And unpopular opinion, I think this game is fine. I don't think this game is that good, honestly. I have a few. There's a few things about this game that is making me not get into it, because when this was first announced, I was like, hell yeah, I'm all in. This is what I'm looking for as far as like Metroidvania games, because typically I really like these games. I love like Hollow Knight, really love that game. I just like the Metroidvania style game. And I think the biggest thing that is hindering me from enjoying this game is how obtuse the map design is. And the issue I'm having personally with it is that it is, especially when you get after the third one, it is, for me, it's really hard to figure out where to go in this game after you get a new ability. And even though there is a mini map that shows you, oh, there's this path, and this path, but by and large, you kind of have to figure out which is the correct way to go. And
that's Metroid.
Yeah,
that's what I was about. That's
exactly.
what I was going to ask you. Like, what's your history of Metroid?
I don't have any history. That's
right.
That's
you said
the
okay.
problem.
You did say that. Okay.
With Hollow Knight, it very, very, I would say naturally, gave you indicators of what to do next. While it didn't tell you what to do, it had teleportation systems in place that you would be able to easily get from one part of the gigantic map to another. And this game doesn't have that.
Well, yeah. Okay.
That's a very fair criticism. of Metroid in general, because that is a Metroid staple. Like
Mhm.
that, if they added what you're talking about, I feel like you don't. It's not Metroid anymore.
But you
But I
know
think that's a
what?
very valid criticism
And
of that franchise.
You know what? I think this game, and this is something I like about it so far, because I had that moment, Alfredo. I had that moment where I looked at the map and I'm like, "What the fuck?
Yeah.
God
It's happened
damn
a
it!
couple
What the
times. Happened a
fuck
couple
All
is
the
times.
time with me. I'm like,
Um,
I find myself just backtracking
but
over
but
and over.
but then I cleared my head and I said, I am Samus. I am stranded on a planet covered in these parasites. Let me just take a second and explore the map. The game has the first time you interact with the map, the game says take your time and examine the map. And I'm like,
Mhm.
you know what? I should take that advice. I should heed that advice. And I look at the map and I slowly scroll over it. And I find all the little points that I need to find to progress. And I'm like, okay, now I have the charge beam. Okay, let me go through the map, find all the places. There they are, and I can backtrack effectively to those points. And I know in the past some of those map issues have been almost a hindrance to the playability or the replayability of a Metroid game, but I feel like in Dread, and it might be because I'm used to how the maps are set up in Metroid games, I'm looking at it in a way that I would imagine an adventurer or someone stranded in this world would. It is survival. I'm
Right.
looking at it in a point of trying to survive. I need to get to this point without being killed.
Mhm.
So let me go there in the most effective way I can.
I
Uh,
see your point. Yeah, it
so
makes sense.
I think the maps are better in this game than any other Metroid game.
I
They're
disagree. I disagree
really
with that. I think Super Metroid has. Here's the thing about how I feel about the map with this game. I think Super Metroid has the best map of any. One of my favorite just overall games of all time. I think the map design in that game is perfect because it's almost like an open world,
Mhm.
and you
Yep.
can really attack it in any way you want. And with something like this is like in the middle between Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion. Metroid Fusion, I think you'd actually like, Alfredo, because it's way more linear than this. There is more indications of where to go. A lot of Metroid fans didn't like that game though. And
Mhm.
I
so
feel I feel like this map is like a very simple puzzle. It's not even that complex. It's because
it can be confusing and it looks a little, and I will say it looks a little overwhelming too.
it looks overwhelming. Sure, absolutely.
I can definitely say because there have been moments even for me, and I love Metroid, where I'm like, where the fuck am I supposed to go? Like that's happened a couple
It's me
times.
all the time in this game.
But I do get that same
But
feeling
that,
you get, Taylor, where I'm like, when I figure it out, it's like that's part of the puzzle. It's Metroid.
but
But
I think real quick, I think that the atmosphere that they've created in Dread, which is an atmosphere of horror and anxiety, where you are
And
constantly being
Dread.
and
but
ooh wow and Dread,
You need the drums.
we where you're being hunted, that confusion, that map confusion, because imagine you were stranded on a planet, you had to look at like a small map and you had to figure out where you were going, and there's a big robot coming to kill you. You would almost have a heart attack. My heart is pumping. I'm getting these. My adrenaline's pumping while playing this game. I don't know. I think that those moments of backtracking where you do have to, you go around and you're like, that was the wrong way, and you sort of hit yourself over it, like that was the wrong way you went, damn it, you idiot, now you're gonna get caught. You have to go back and you try again, and when you die, you luckily, I will say, this game has pretty substantially improved save states
yes,
over a lot of Metroid games.
yes,
Oh, for
and
sure.
that is another point. But I do want to go over a little bit about the
What,
map
wait, sorry.
design.
What's different about the saves? What?
they are
Plentiful.
they're more plentiful. Yeah, you come across them 3 out of every like 5 rooms. So
So
it's
Hmm.
about the map design in particular. So yeah, I could see how the staple of Metroid, but for somebody who who is the first Metroid game, it comes across as not not modern. It seems like it's stuck in kind of like old ways where I felt like we were past this, where like I shouldn't have to go like where am I going? I'm spending like 20 minutes, 30 minutes just trying to figure out what little path has just opened that I can now use. But going along with that, I think in the second world was when I first encountered it, where I was just like, okay, where the hell do I go? I've been through each room like 5 different times. I can't find anything, and the game expected me that like there was a single area on like I think like on the right corner of the room that I had to shoot, and it just opened an entirely new path, and there was no indication that you had to shoot it at all or that it was an openable area, and it just opened, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a little weird, but now I can actually progress through this game.
I think you should look at it from a different perspective. I would compare it more to Dark Souls than anything else. Because there are moments in those games where it's like, where the fuck am I supposed to go?
There are,
And then
but
it's like, and it's like, oh, you figure it out.
I
Like,
think
you know
Dark Souls
one...
is much more forgiving in terms of exploration and where to go than this game actually is.
How much reading have you done in the game?
0.
Like okay, when the game does, and I have to give Dread credit over like Super Metroid, where Dread really at the beginning of the game just explains everything you have to do to progress.
Oh, okay. You're talking about like when you're talking about the robot and he's saying, telling you how to play the game and stuff. Yeah, I have read all of those. Yeah.
He explains everything, and then when you die, those little pause moments where you can read the little rules, it will give you more clues, and those clues are immensely helpful. Immensely helpful, more than any game I've played, where when you die, those like 4 little clues that cycle through when the game is reloading.
Well,
absolutely.
Here's the thing, and this brings me to what you were saying earlier about another issue I have with the game. This game is too forgiving, I think. Way too forgiving. This game is called Metroid Dread, and never in playing this game have I personally ever felt a sense of dread or a sense of horror in the game. I feel like the enemies that are kind of like these predator like hunters that you're kind of running against, when you're basically supposed to avoid them and stealth through them and run away when they if they do spot you. And I feel like it's more of a instead of it being like something like Alien Isolation where, oh my god, like I have to be really, really careful. It's for me, it's more of, okay, I just need to figure, it's more like a puzzle. Okay, I got to figure out a way around them. And if they catch me, it's fine because the save states are so incredibly forgiving. Like you just
because it won't put you at a save state. It will put you at a checkpoint, right?
Yeah, the checkpoint is just right next to where I died, and I'm like, okay, I just have to try again, and then it's just more of a like I just have to figure out, okay, I gotta go in this circle pattern, or just figure out how to use a certain ability to get around them, rather than being like, oh my god, they're gonna catch me.
I completely agree with you. Those parts are my least favorite part of the game, for sure. Because yeah, you're right. It is just like you do it. If they catch you, you're probably not going to get the counter. I hate the counter system. It's stupid that it's just basically random generated, you know.
For the enemies. Yeah.
For the enemies. I don't like that at all. That's kind of like, it takes me out of it a little bit. Like, but besides that, yeah, if they kill me, it's like, all right, cool. Load for 5 seconds, go back to the front. I don't think the
counter system is random. I got into a pattern. I learned pretty quickly how the counter system with the enemies worked, and it helps. You miss it sometimes because it is such a small margin of error. It's a very, very, very tight margin of error. But if you can time it right, you're good to go. You can keep fighting through.
But it's different every time though. Like every time they might hold it for a little longer, or they might hit you right away.
But they telegraph it. And the whole game teaches you about these like differently timed telegraph techniques because it's a Metroid.
I guess for me, I'm like, I'd rather if they caught me, they just kill me and we just start from the beginning.
Yeah.
I'd rather that as
Same.
opposed to this little mini game. I don't like the actual mini game of it.
I like the little quick time event. I love that just one, not even like much. It's just a tiny little quick time event to escape this predator.
I will say I
Um,
might like it more if I had an OLED Switch because it looks amazing.
true,
And the
true.
game looks amazing. This is the best
does.
looking Switch game I've ever seen. Hands down. Like it looks I'm so impressed at the Switch.
You know
game.
what? That's actually the area I will disagree with.
Okay.
I will dissent there, because I will argue real quick against what you were saying, Alfredo, about it being too forgiving. I think that's sort of the point of these games ultimately, because back in the day, I was playing the NES Metroid a long time ago, and I only just recently started playing Super Metroid, but playing the old one, the save states in those games were technically forgiving for games back in that day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And
Are you talking about Zero Mission or are you talking about actual
I'm
NES?
talking about OG NES.
Okay. I never played that one.
And I think that is ultimately part of the game. I actually don't like how modern Metroidvanias, like Hollow Knight, will make the. I feel like this game speeds up that process even more. Because in Hollow Knight, when you die, you go back like two rooms and you come back through and you save and you do all that nonsense. You get your souls or whatever. And in this game, it's the same thing, but you have this pace. You have this pace. Samus is going on, where she's always running. She has that counter move, which really like slices through enemies real quick, and then you go right into a boss, or you go into one of the Emmy rooms, and I don't feel like it's repetitive. I never really feel the point of it being repetitive where I'm like I lose to a room and I'm like, I did that wrong. That's on me, the player. That's not on anything the game did. It's on me. Next time I'll be better. And it just immediately throws me back into that room. I get that tiny little entryway to prepare, and I'm like, all right, don't do that. And I do it, and I get past the next thing, and I figure it out, and I get through, and then, oh, I'm caught. I made another mistake. It's not something the game's doing, I feel. I feel it's more on me, the player, than the game just sort of fucking me out of winning. And I like how fast paced that is, because I can go through an Emmy room maybe 10 times and lose 10 times and finally get through the 11th, but not for a moment feel like I've been taken out of the atmosphere of the game for a second, because I've been messing up and I progressed and I got better and I finally got through. And I feel like that pace was really, it never stopped. It was just frustrating, and I wanted to achieve it. And I did. And I feel like that's sort of the point of a Metroidvania, is forgiveness but still difficulty. Where it does forgive you, and I like that it's forgiving you a lot easier than the older games, because we've moved on to like faster paced games, and it still challenges you. I really like how it does challenge you, even though it's a puzzle. It's an action based puzzle. It's definitely not going to be Alien Isolation. It's not like a survival horror game where you're tiptoeing around. It is, you are going as fast as you can through these levels. You are blasting your way through enemies. You are blasting your way past enemies. And I think this game has really hit that hard. Where I will disagree though is the art. I think the art is some of the worst in the Metroid series.
Really?
Actually, I will. You watch that opening sequence, and this is where I think we'll get into something I was thinking about already, about our discussion about graphics versus playability.
Yeah.
I think some of the animations in this game are really lazy. it's like they didn't even try. There's a during that storybook sequence at the opening, they just had like pictures that were
Oh
cut
yeah, that
out,
was terrible. That was terrible. Yeah.
absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
Some of the background stuff too is it just feels solid, and they've added one effect over it, like a wiggle effect, and called it a day. And
Have you been playing docked or portable?
docked.
Okay, I've been playing docked and portable. Kind of. I think on my TV, I like the aesthetic.
Oh, the aesthetic,
I
beautiful. I always like the Metroid aesthetic.
and it carries it to me. Like that carries it, and it makes it so for me I can ignore the bad animation. I can't really argue that they're good, but I don't notice them because the overall vibe of everything just looks so cool, and it looks
I'm
really good on
actually
my screen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually going to take this back to a thing that Ben mentioned a while ago about Pokemon, about how their animation style has progressed, and it hasn't. It's actually gone backwards. When it transitioned out of the pixel art to the 3D, it became worse. And I don't want to say the exact same for Metroid, because I don't think that's true. I think it has progressed some, but it has maintained some of the same mentalities that you would have animating pixel art, where you take shortcuts, where some things aren't noticed because everything is blocky and small. And now they're more noticeable because it's in 3D. And this is a Switch game. This cost me $50. I don't know how much it cost everyone else.
What? How'd you get a discount?
At Walmart. Video games cost $50 at Walmart.
What?
Did not know that. Oh, everyone spread the word.
Yep, spread the word. If you want to buy a Switch game, it costs $50 at Walmart. All of them.
Yeah.
Except for the ones that are less. Fun fact. So, this game cost me $50, and I'm like, yes, the game plays like a $50 game. I wholeheartedly believe that. But the art style is lacking. Samus herself is the only AAA thing in this game that I've seen so far. Like, she looks awesome. Her suit looks awesome. All of her transformation sequences look awesome. But you start looking in the background and you're like, that's a stylistic choice kind of brought forward from the pixel art era.
Mm-hmm.
That's my thought.
God. Well, Ben, I want to get to Ben. As somebody on the outside looking in for now of this game,
Yeah.
what are your like overall like kind of impressions on what we said, what you've seen of the game so far?
I think fundamentals wise, the game seems really solid. So I think I'm sold on playing it. It was I was gonna play it anyway. I was just just a matter of time. But I think you guys are convincing me to get on it sooner. Though the things that I'm hearing, like the primary negatives that I'm hearing, are like pretty worrying to me. Where one, there's like too much complexity. I think that's a classic death knell of Metroidvania games. The basics have to be approachable enough that you can keep in the back of your mind where you were when you saw that locked door, so that when you get the new power, you're like, oh shit, I should go back there. How do I get back there? It's part of the fun of Metroidvania games is that mental catalog of like, I've been to a place that I can't get through yet, and when I get the new power, then I'll return and be able to open it. So hearing that the map is too complex is kind of a bummer. Hearing that there's so many save rooms is also a bummer, because I do think the challenge is part of the sauce in Metroidvania games. I hear what you're saying, Taylor, in that it was more forgiving for its time. Like the original Metroid was more forgiving for its time. I think you're right about that. But it was also like a much more open world-esque experience for that time. So it had to have those kind of like location-driven save states versus progression-driven save states. so I'm not sure that it was necessarily an affordance in terms of ease of play. Like I'm not sure that it was something that was meant to make the game easier versus just meant to make you able to turn off your console after a little bit, you know. So I do think that like and so modern Metroidvania games have inherited the challenge of those original Metroidvania games, even if they were not intended to be challenging for their time. They're challenging by modern standards, and modern Metroidvanias have kind of like adopted that. So for Metroid Dread to lessen the difficulty, puts it out of step with where Metroidvania games are. I think just from what I'm hearing from you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this game feels to me easier than Hollow Knight.
For sure.
Yeah,
Hollow Knight's pretty hard.
Yeah,
Hollow Knight's pretty hard. Yeah.
So I don't think this is from a difficulty. Like this is far from the difficulty of something like Super Metroid.
Was that harder?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if you're not playing with like Nintendo Online, like save states and stuff, yeah, it's pretty hard. I love that game, but it's way harder than this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just to wrap it up for me, and Eskimofo kind of puts it in nicely. So they mentioned Metroidvania games with a dash of roguelike, which would be something like Dark Souls or Hollow Knight, where you have like a Souls-like component and you're getting different abilities through there. Yeah, Dead Cells.
For sure.
That's what I was expecting more of out of this game. I think the marketing really sold it on like sold it more in a survival horror light to me, which is what I picked up on, and that's what I was looking forward to. And because I'm not getting any of that from a difficulty point from the atmosphere itself with the enemies, is left me in this disappointed state. I think the game is a fine game. It's just fine, but I also think that there are much better alternatives that actually give me what I was expecting. Like Hollow Knight. Like I wanted something a lot more challenging and a lot more grueling than what this game actually is. I still think it's a fine game, but I don't think it's worth the $60 price point personally. But I still have a lot of game to go. I'm not sure how many biomes there are, so maybe that'll change later this week when I have nothing else to play.
I've heard it's around an 11-hour game, I think.
Yeah, I think it's 10, 11 hours.
Yeah.
I can knock that out. Probably.
I would Ben, in response to the confusion about the map, design wise, I think the design of each individual room is memorable enough. I genuinely believe that. The placement of each character, the glow of each rock, the placement of each tile, I think, is unique enough to remember at least vaguely where you're going and where you've been. A lot more so than older Metroid games. I think the map itself it is so big and sprawling at first that you go, what on earth? What am I doing with this? But if you zoom in, if you use the R2 button and you zoom in and look a little closer, everything is diagrammed so nicely. There are beautiful little pictures for each thing. You hover over each thing, it tells you exactly what that thing does. And I think just a little exploration and a pretty normal understanding of what each room was like. I don't think the map's confusing at all. At the end of the day, I think it's overwhelming, but I don't think it's confusing when you play through each room.
I'm just saying, I am currently still lost. I've been looking for where to go for the past 20 minutes of my playtime. I still don't know where to go. Someone help me.
We're gonna help you, but we're all gonna probably play this game at some point. I know, Ben, you're leaning towards getting it. We all know Cole has it, so I thought we were gonna have a good conversation about this when we all finish it, and we all can have complete thoughts on it. So this has been. I cannot wait till I finish this and we can have a real conversation about this, about where this ranks in terms of Metroid games.
Yeah.
Just to move on. Alfredo, you guessed right. You guessed that we were going to get
Actually, I did not guess right. Taylor
you
guessed
your
right.
your original guess was
I
right.
guessed right.
Your original
was
guess was
me.
right. You went back on it last week. Taylor picked it up, so you're right. Taylor
It
is
was
right.
all me. Ooh. What can I say?
So a little boy named Sora had an amazing trailer made by Nintendo. God damn, that trailer was amazing. Like, even though he wasn't my main pick, I'm watching this trailer like, man, I can't wait till he comes to Smash. How are y'all feeling about Sora being the last Smash character?
Who? What? What are you talking about?
You know, Kingdom Hearts, the best
What's
video
the
game ever.
Sora?
You know, Sora. From that.
Oh man.
I sat there on the morning. I waited. Like I'm transferring jobs right now, so I'm cleaning out my desk, and I'm like, I gotta set aside an hour to watch a fucking Super Smash Brothers announcement trailer. So I sat there and I twiddled my thumbs, and I had my coffee, and Mario goes over to the little flame, picks it up, throws it, boom, and then the fucking key sword flies out.
Keyblade. Have some
Key
respect.
The key
Key
sword.
key in my ass.
Oh,
And I'm like, oh damn it, it's Sora. I knew it. And you know what? I was pretty disappointed. I was
Oh,
not. I wasn't disappointed that morning. I guess. I would have been disappointed if it was like fucking Score Bunny from Pokemon. I would have been disappointed if it was a Pokemon. But I was sitting there and I'm like, this is acceptable. It's not like super hype. It's not Master Chief, but it feels right. And the more I've sat on it, the longer I'm like, yes, Sora belongs in Smash 100%. I don't think another character could have finished the game off like Sora.
not that intro. Like that trailer convinced me. Because it was so just it was so just like, yeah, like, because it started with the Squid Girl, and that's how we started this whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, we started this whole announcement of Smash with her. We started with that, and then he comes in. It literally looks like a Kingdom Hearts cutscene. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, like I wanted it to be Master Chief really bad. I wanted it to be Lara Croft really bad, but I can accept.
You had me. You had me going. I was hanging out with a buddy and we were talking about it. And we were talking about the leaks about how it was a Square Enix character. And I was like, you know what? Could be Lara Croft. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, that would be horrible. That would not be very good. But I could see them doing it. But I'm really glad that they went with Sora.
And we get all of his amazing Kingdom Hearts outfits, which I'm excited
Yes,
about. Including that awesome
that's cool.
looking like Toon World.
The black and
so
white
tiny.
one, yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm curious how much Disney stuff we're going to see. I'm curious because
None.
I don't know, because we saw Mickey Mouse.
None.
We saw the Mickey Mouse keychain.
No,
At the
we saw
literally
we
have to start
we
like
saw- we
Disney
saw
giving
a
their seal of
keychain.
approval.
No, we saw a keychain with a circle and two smaller circles on it.
But here's the thing: in that same announcement, they also, toward the latter half of the presentation, they slowly, like on the sly, announced that Kingdom Hearts 1, 2,
Coming to the
all of
Switch.
the whole collection
See,
is coming to the Switch.
that was the bad. That was the bad.
Oh,
That was the bad news.
damn!
That
I
was
should have bought it on
crazy.
Switch instead of PS4.
Well, that was what I was gonna ask. Ben, do we have time to play it on the Switch for Ben's book club?
Sure, I haven't even started on PS4. So
Well, the problem is we don't
You
have
don't-
a release date for when that
You
is
don't
actually
want to.
coming.
You're not gonna want to play those on the Switch though. They're gonna be
Yeah,
cloud
probably not.
versions.
They're also
cloud version.
That's
the
what I'm saying.
cloud
It's the bad news. Like
Ah.
you're making a cloud version of some PS2 and 3DS.
Yeah, that's weird.
games.
It's still
why?
the jury is still out because there's some rumors saying that it was miscommunication, saying that they're saying that it's supposed to be Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 as the regular version, and then only Kingdom Hearts 3 is supposed to be
As
the cloud version, but
Yeah.
it hasn't been confirmed yet. So we don't
I
exactly
heard it was
know
gonna
yet.
be free.
I don't know about
completely
that.
free,
That'd be
100% free.
I would highly doubt that one. I would highly doubt that one.
It's free at Walmart.
We can
What
It's
do
free
you
at
guys-
Walmart. You just walk away with it.
Nintendo's like free.
The doors start beeping at you. What is this like
Mickey
a
Mouse is like
celebration?
free.
Right.
No, I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I think it was a good way to end this monumental game.
Hmm. And
You
the
know, this-
first DLC pack I'm actually going to buy.
Oh,
Yeah,
you don't have
that's
any of
fair.
them?
I don't.
Nope.
Nope.
I don't either, but this one with the
Sephiroth,
You got Minecraft, you got
Sora,
Sora,
and someone from Tekken.
Steve, yeah, Tekken, and then
Kazuya from Tekken.
then the big-breasted lady from
the Xenoblade big-breasted ladies,
Xenoblade
yes.
Warriors.
And then
So
I think you get the arms lady, Min Min, I believe.
Min
Oh, you
Min, you
do?
get Min Min, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't use anybody except my characters.
Yeah,
so,
I don't care
like,
about anyone except Sora. So
But I will try Sora out, and I'm really interested to see what his classic mode's gonna be. Because if they do it right, and like they are allowed to use a certain amount of Disney things, that's gonna be good.
They're not.
Mhm.
They're not.
I don't have hope for it, but I pray for it.
No. They specifically the way the trailer was set up was like Sakurai saying, "Oh, Sora, he's from a video game. In that video game, you play with what they call Disney characters, whatever those are." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. So like they're teasing the game's going to be on the Switch, but also at the same time, none of the Disney stuff is going to be
now that you guys
on Smash.
mention it, because during the actual presentation where they were showing off the new stages and everything, there were parts where basically the stage transforms into a very famous Kingdom Hearts
Yeah.
type stage with basically Disney characters and the Kingdom Hearts characters like kind of like on these glass panels, and the main Kingdom Hearts characters were on them. But I don't think like Sora, Goofy, and Donald, who are your main companions in all of these games, were even on them.
None of
Now
the
that you
Disney
mention
characters
it.
were on them. No.
That's true.
No, it was.
Which
I
is
was waiting
disappointing.
for it. I was like, they're gonna go through all the fucking stupid, who cares, nonsense Square Enix characters, and then they're gonna show Mickey, and they didn't.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be all these nonsense, stupid little Twinkie Square Enix characters.
I mean, they got Sora, so you know, I
I
got
feel
what I
like getting
wanted.
Sora was the hard part. I
Yeah.
feel like from a sheer just like difficulty standpoint, he had to have been the hardest character to get.
Oh, absolutely. I think they mentioned that before.
They literally,
Where-
that's what Sakurai was
yeah.
saying in the like when he was introducing everything. He was like, "Yeah, he was the most requested character since Brawl."
No, we know that's not true. We know the most requested character was Goku, followed by
Okay.
I didn't
Shrek.
want Goku.
No, it was Goku, Shrek, but the only ones they counted were video game characters, so they
Probably,
only
probably.
counted Sora. So it was Shrek, Goku, Sora.
If it was
And-
Goku, I would fly out to his house and hug him. That would be-
Absolutely.
That would be amazing.
You know
but-
what? For a little bit, I believed like that's not even that much of a meme. I believed that could happen.
Maybe
in the
Ultimate
sequel.
2. Maybe Ultimate
Yeah.
2. Maybe Ultimate 2. But I digress. Another game that came out, that established itself kind of in the early 2000s, like Smash. We're getting remasters of the GTA collection.
Who cares?
And I'm not excited about it. I know Cole, if you're listening, I know you're excited about this, so I'm happy for
We know.
you.
We know.
We know.
Oh,
I'm
you
not
own the
excited for it.
games. We know you own the games. Just play
He-
them.
He doesn't own them in the remastered version, so he's gonna have to get this. Is anybody else interested in this?
No.
I am. Yeah, I
I'm
am.
piqued. My interest is
I-
piqued on it.
I'll wait for a sale.
Yeah, I never played these games on PS2, and I actually did pick them up on PS4. And I played through a good bit of 3, probably like 10 hours or so. But god damn, the controls are hard to wrap your mind around as a modern gamer. They are-
Those were in the moment fun. Like when
Yeah.
they came out, I played through San Andreas and Vice City when they came out with my sister, and they were amazing at the time because I didn't know any better. I didn't know what good controls were.
Right. Are
I-
they
I
not
can-
updating the controls for these new remasters?
No, they are.
Okay.
They are. That's the one thing I know that's confirmed. but they did not confirm much. We don't know much about what this is going to include. That's where my trepidation comes in, where I'm like, I know the controls are going to be updated, but what else is going to be updated?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I think the native resolution of the games is going to be 1080p, and
Yeah.
maybe they upres the actual assets, but
60
they're
frames
not.
probably. They're
Yeah,
probably
oh,
making
yeah,
60 frames as well.
I hope so, and it's going to be on Switch too, right? That's confirmed.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
what,
Really?
and
I
that
didn't
when
know
I
that.
saw it was announced for Switch, I was like, okay, that puts a cap on what this is going to
Right.
be already.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's. I mean, they are glorified re-releases. I think.
Mhm.
Fine, which is fine.
Yeah, but the thing, I mean, the real difference maker is the modified controls. I mean, if they have modern controls on these games, I'll definitely play them. Yeah, I'll definitely play it because the graphics are not that big of a deal to me. And like I said, I already picked these up on PS4, and the only reason I stopped playing 3 was because it's hard to play. I mean, it's physically hard to play because of the dated controls.
Mhm.
And I just got stuck on one mission. I'm like, oh my god, this if I could just use the trigger to shoot, this would be so much fucking easier.
What's map
So
to
yes,
shoot?
I think it's
Square?
Square.
Oh,
Yeah, Square.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
Insane.
Yeah.
There's no aim. There's
It
no aim.
made
You have to
sense.
like
It
lock
made
on.
sense at the time.
Insane.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I don't know how much they can change that aspect of it. Maybe, yeah, you can move the shooting to the triggers, but like, I feel like the game's gonna be super easy if you are just able to aim down your sights like that.
That's okay.
I
That's
hope
okay to me.
it's gonna be. I'm very curious of what I need. That's why I'm like, why didn't we see anything?
Yeah.
Because
That's
It's weird.
really
It's a little weird
first.
that they haven't
Yeah.
shown anything, but I imagine it's because the game doesn't look any different.
Right. Exactly.
know?
Right, like they've had so many opportunities to show this. There've been so many press conferences, and they just said, "Up, press release."
Mhm.
You know, so I'm curious as to what this is, especially since they're going to be removing the older games that are already on like storefronts. They're going to be taking those down, and this is going to replace those. It's like, okay, this is probably not going to be much, but yeah, if it's improved controls, then I think a lot of gamers are going to be introduced to this for the first time, which is always a
Yeah.
good thing.
Mhm.
And I'll play it on Switch too. I think that's assuming it's 60 on Switch, which it's a PS2 port. It better be 60 on Switch.
I'm
But
with you, bro.
Metroid Dread runs at 60, so it's not impossible.
yeah,
It's unlikely.
Mhm. Right.
I
Yeah.
feel like it's up in the air.
yeah,
It's
I'll
up
be
in
right
the air.
back. You guys keep talking about this nonsense game.
yeah. If it's, I mean, if it's not like 60 on Switch, then then I guess I'll play it on PS4.
Maybe try
But-
remote play. Maybe
Go
try
back to
remote
the-
play.
Go back to the unremastered version.
Yeah, no, I'm not picking up the old control version again. At least not until I try the new control version.
I swear, I brought San Andreas at least like 5 times in my life. Like, I love that game, and I really do want to play it again. So I do think that at some point I will pick this up. But knowing Rockstar, this can be 60.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
there's no way. There's no way I'm gonna pay 60 for this. It's the same thing with Mass Effect Collection. Like, I love those games too, but I'm not gonna pay full price for this.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it will be. Maybe it will be, but the collection that they were replacing this with was like $15.
I mean,
But-
they have to release it for $60 because Grand Theft Auto 5, which came out how many years ago, it's still $60, isn't it?
No, it's
Is
not.
it not?
I think it retails at most for 40, and then they have sales all the time.
I still wouldn't put it past Rockstar to
either.
because I feel like people will pay the $60 for a Rockstar game regardless.
Cole is going to be paying for this game.
Oh, for sure.
Like, we already know one person's like, I know there's gonna be a lot of people that really want to do this, and I respect that because these are. I mean, I can't speak to 3. I never played 3, but Vice City and
3 is
San
good.
Andreas to me are classics.
So it's
Yeah.
3. 3 is a classic.
3's
I
I think it's a landmark. It's a real landmark game. I don't think it aged well.
The story of 3, that's the one I remember. Well, 4 is very good story-wise, but 3 was my
3's
first
like
one, and
Mafia.
that's a pretty
3's
good
like
one.
Mafia, right? Like
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
they all are so different. That's why I love about the series. They're all different.
I feel like it's a little scummy if they're taking down the $15 version and not letting you buy that one anymore, and then putting up a $60 version
Oh, it's
that
very
is
scummy.
yeah, that is only different in controls.
That's very scummy. But
15
I don't put it
each or
past them.
15 total?
Right now, it's 15 total for the
Oh, wow.
collection. Yeah, yeah. And if you buy them individually, they're like $7.50 each.
Mhm.
So it's not that much more, but
I will say they will still be on iPhone. So, and
yeah, that's true.
they're really good on iPhone as long as you put the controller with them. Like I can tolerate the bad controls on there. So yeah, I am mildly anticipating this. Did they say a release date?
They haven't. I don't believe so.
2023.
They were just trying to get ahead of the leaks,
Right.
or I mean,
It's been
just
leaked since
It's the
2 weeks
it's
or so.
the most like everybody knew this was like getting announced since I think like what like July.
Mhm.
yeah.
It's
It's been a while since it was leaked.
Hey, do you come from a superstitious and cowardly
Or
line?
do you like hearing three idiots talk about nerdy and off the wall stuff?
Then come and listen to the Pop Striker podcast, where we talk about
How Naruto's a lab rat,
The Curse of Jimmy Fallon.
Chainsaw Man.
and much more. You can catch the Pop Striker podcast at Phantom and Media.
So while we wait, actually, we can kind of start the conversation. We'll usher Taylor into it. Speaking of updated frame rates, this was my topic. I wanted to just have a kind of conversation because we're all gamers, but we all game a little differently. And so I wanted to have a conversation about graphics, resolution, versus performance frame rate. And kind of just want to get like a gauge of, what you all prefer. So I'll start with you, Ben. What do you prefer, like, as your primary like gaming experience?
I would have given you a different answer a year ago,
Me
before the PS5 generation, but the PS5 generation has totally opened my eyes to the necessity of 60 frames per second. completely and utterly opened my eyes to the necessity of 60 frames per second. And the game that did it was Demon Souls, because I was playing Miles Morales on Fidelity to get that sweet ray tracing, because it did not have performance ray tracing on launch.
Right.
Which is the best way to play that game, period. So there's no question about it. If performance ray tracing is available, like it is on the Spider-Man games, that's the one I'm going with for sure, because it's not that much. Like, the resolution downscaling is not noticeable compared to the 30 frames per second downgrade. So yeah, I think like just the smoothness of Demon Souls, which is another one that like Demon Souls has a performance versus a fidelity mode. But I remember like watching a stream just prior to launch where the developers were talking about it, and they're like, the vast majority of the time, the performance mode is gonna hit full 4K, and in very rare cases, we're gonna downsample the resolution. But if you really care about holding locked 4K the entire time, then here's the fidelity mode for you. And to me, that just said like, okay, play this thing in performance mode, because that's the way it's intended to be played. And the fidelity mode is just kind of a box to check for them. And that game was so beautiful in its fidelity mode, and the 60 frames per second was so good that it was just like, it's like hard to go back now. And playing Bloodborne after that, which is locked to 30 still, was a difficult transition.
It is rough to see, like, after you go through Demon Souls,
Yeah.
to seeing how beautiful it is going to Bloodborne, and I never felt it as clunky until I played it like this year. I always looked at that game as like super just responsive.
Yeah, it didn't. Yeah, right. It didn't feel that way before, but now that like all the Souls games are 60 just standard,
Right.
It's weird. It's weird that they like just won't do a patch for Bloodborne, but we can get into that some other time. So yeah, I used to be all about like give me fidelity, but unless there are significant differences, like ray tracing is one of the things where I'm like, okay, I'm going to consider doing the fidelity mode for ray tracing. But if it's just locked 4K, like I would prefer 1080, frankly, to 1080 60 than 4K 30, I think.
I assume we've moved on to our conversation about gameplay versus graphics.
Yeah.
Yep.
So your argument is that 60 frames per second on the PS5 has really awakened you to a better state of gaming?
Yeah, well, basically what I was saying was like I would have previously answered this question with fidelity.
Okay.
Is like what I would go with over performance. But since so many games on PS5 are 60, and that wasn't really previously an option most of the time on PS4 games.
Yeah.
Like I now have a preference that I didn't have before, right? Where I prefer 60 over fidelity.
Can I backtrack and keep it on this conversation, but actually talk about Grand Theft Auto, specifically San Andreas, one of my favorite video games. I, Duke of Nostalgia, it's in the name. I'm a big fan of how it plays, even if it's not perfect. A lot of games could be perfected. A lot of games could be brought up to modern standards. But I think the way San Andreas plays is reminiscent of a good time in gaming. They had a I think the controls in that game are adequate. Heck, they were able to port it over to a phone and it didn't feel any worse than it did on its system. My feeling about it is some games can be upscaled and brought to 60 frames per second, and that's fine. And they can have reworked controls. But I don't think most games need it. I think, like movies, games kind of are a chunk of history taken out. Whether it is a corporate need for that game, whether it's like a B movie or a Shrek game, where it's just like a corporate, we're making a video game, or it's someone's genuine artistic passion, like Psychonauts. I think Psychonauts 1 is perfect how it was made originally. I don't need any remasters. I don't need anything better. Psychonauts 2 is great how it is. But Psychonauts 1 is also perfect how it is kind of how I view it. And that's a game that had many, many years in between these two games. So some games I can definitely see a Dark Souls being improved because it's an adrenaline filled game, and the more fidelity you have playing that game, the better. I agree. And if they're going to make it that way, that's a whole new game. That's basically a new Dark Souls in my mind. A better Dark Souls. And you can almost forget about it. But some more story-based indie games, not saying San Andreas is an indie game, but it's more story-based. I think that game plays perfectly in its form where the characters look kind of silly and stupid, and the gameplay is ridiculously wonky. It's fun. I just think that's fun.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually that we necessarily disagree, but I want to make sure that I'm understanding what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think now that there's basically no game that wouldn't be improved with higher frame rate. But I don't necessarily yeah, pretty much. Unless frame rate is somehow involved in the gameplay in a way that where it's like
Sure.
I agree with you 90% of the time, except when it comes to RPGs, turn-based specifically.
What? So you think they benefit from 30, or you think they don't benefit from 60?
I think that they benefit from 30 because I feel like 30 is a more cinematic feel. Like movies don't run at 60 frames per second.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah, they run at 24.
24, and then there's some that would do it 30, depending. But it never exceeds 30. It's mostly 24. When I'm doing like one game I tried it with was Yakuza Like a Dragon. That has a performance mode and a fidelity mode. I tried the performance mode first, and it felt jarring to me. When I'm doing performance, it's usually for like an active game. Like let's say, a shooter or a, just a third person shooter. I definitely prefer 60 for that. But when it comes to like a slower game, if I can get the resolution as high as possible and it just looks beautiful on my screen, I'd rather have it at 30. Now, if it's at the same time, you know, computers, like if you're playing on Steam, you can probably get both. You can probably have high fidelity and have great performance. On consoles, a lot of times you have to pick and choose.
Quick backtracking. I do technically agree with you, Ben. Every game would be better 60 frames per second, technically speaking.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm kind of, I don't know if you've gone, if you were in this mind state that I'm in and you've just transgressed and you're better than me now. Not saying that everywhere, but I'm just like, maybe you've seen something that I haven't seen. But I'm still in this mindset where I'm past the sort of childhood whimsy of games look amazing. I'm always noticing little imperfections in games now, and I'm completely, my brain just pushes it aside. Specifically, that's brought about, I recently hung out with some friends at a lake house, and we just sat around playing VR games all day. And VR games look horrible.
Yeah,
They look
Pretty much.
bad.
they do.
But there's still
But
a
they
lot
look
of
amazing.
fun.
But they look
But
amazing too.
But there's still
Yeah.
a lot of fun. Doesn't matter that they look bad. It's just the experience. And would RPGs be better at 60 frames per second? Probably not. But I think you're right in me agreeing with you. I don't think games, personally, on a personal level, I don't think games need to be rescaled or reformatted to be 60 frames per second or smoothed out graphics wise. Unless the team that made the game thinks it should be. If the team that made the game thinks, why don't we upscale this game, make it 60 frames, make it better, and we feel like if that's the case, then I'm completely supportive of it.
I like that you used VR as an example because I think it actually supports my point.
Okay.
And I got to pull out my dev card here at this point because there is factually there is no VR game that would not be improved by an increased frame rate.
Sure.
Because an increased frame rate in VR is less separation between you and the experience.
Right.
Every frame lost in a second is you somewhat taken out of the experience.
It increases the immersion.
Right. Your vision doesn't quite move as fast as it does in real life, right? With every frame loss. So if you're seeing 72 frames per eye, which I think is what the Quest runs at, and then you look at like 90 frames per eye, which is what I think the PSVR runs at, and then 120 frames per eye, which I think the Index can do.
Sure.
It's a clear difference. It's a clear difference in the quality of the experience, no matter what the fidelity of the experience is. The frame rate matters a lot in those cases. So I actually think it matters less in screen games, but in VR games it matters a ton. And if you get too low with frame rate, if you're dropping below 60 or stuff like that, that's when you get like puke territory.
Sure.
Big time.
I remember playing Uncharted 4 when it had like motion blur, and it was just the most disgusting looking thing I've ever seen. Because controllers, the way you're pivoting around the Z-axis does not work with motion blur. So I get that, but I'm gonna say something. I'm kind of going off script, as it were. You like to read. I see books behind you.
Don't be deceived.
No.
Just props.
So this is not exactly a rebuttal. This is just an opinion that I'm stating. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, I like because of its quirky ugliness, its unique chunk of history that it exhibits. It is this weird, cool, awesome little game. But then you go to GTA 5 and you go to the remasters of GTA 5, because GTA 5 itself doesn't look very good anymore, but you go to the remasters of GTA 5 and it looks better and better and better, and looks pretty good now. Comparatively, one's much better than the other visually, but I think they both have their own merits separately as games. And in the same way that I think the Grimm's Fairy Tales are uniquely important but completely non-comparable to Harry Potter. Also important, but different writing styles, different tone, different ways of conveying a message to the viewer. I think San Andreas exists in a place that is old and aesthetically pleasing in its own right, where the new games are aesthetically pleasing in another in a different right.
Right.
I
I
don't.
want to.
Yeah.
I want to get Alfredo in. Before I do, I just want to ask because I get what your point. Like everything is within context. Like when GTA San Andreas came out, it's competing against a lot of other games that are running at 30 frames because that was at that point in time the standard on console. Through that generation and through the PS3 generation, that was the standard. And so that's kind of, and I get what you're saying. Like we should like that game came out 30 frames.
But I
I get what you're saying,
but
but
I
at the same time, it's
understand.
technically not like Ben. What Ben's
Yeah.
saying is true that every game I feel would benefit technically from 60 frames.
What can I ask a question? I do want to get Alfredo on this. I'm sorry, Alfredo.
Oh, you're fine.
We love you.
Thank you.
I want
needed
to
that
ask.
information.
I wanted to ask. Do you think just because you think games are improved by the 60 frames per second? Because I understand from your developer mindset that every frame lost is a moment not immersed, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, especially in VR, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Would you agree that I'm trying to phrase this correctly. Games that are older, specific. I'm not talking about like pixel games from that era, but I'm talking about like
Galaga.
I'm not talking about all that because that's its own beast. But I'm talking about games that could be upscaled and updated to modern necessities. Work fine by themselves, and I almost don't see the point in upscaling them. It's almost a waste of resources.
Like
a little
Alan Wake
bit.
remastered, possibly.
I think it should always be an option.
Yeah.
I think it should always be an option. I think, you should always have that tab to restore it. Like you can have the game restored to its original playing, but also be able to switch it to 60 if you'd like. I think that's the way to go. And I think that's what this generation has kind of done. We've seen a lot of games get that tab of, you can switch it and give it that 60 frames per second. Or if you want to play in the original version, you can do it that way as well. I think I've been playing a lot of Halo. The Halo Master Chief Collection does a really good job of that, where you just press the select button and it turns it into the original Halo 2.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So I get what both you all are saying, but at the same time, like I think both you need to be able to restore these games and have them playable in their original, but also they will be technically better 60.
Can I actually use Halo as an example real quick? That Halo switching between the classic and the modern. You take a classic Halo game and you upscale it to modern resolution and graphics and all that. And you actually lose some of the playability of those games, I feel. And this is I'm also parodying this from many people. Many people I think agree with this statement. Is the original Halo games had a design that was colorful and it was very contrasted with each character contrasted very well with the background. Each alien monster, every vehicle contrasted with the background very nicely. You move that up to modern views, and this is something I've noticed with movies and animation as well. The modern hyper realistic way of modeling and making graphics is almost too realistic that you can't tell what's going on. It's too soft. You go back to those games, you get a little alien dude, very clearly, blue and teal and beige against a gray background. Move up to a modern viewpoint, and there's so many colors going on. you've lost some of what the aiming of that game, where you're supposed to aim very, very quickly, and it's a little jittery at that game. You had to focus directly at this one thing that very clearly popped from the background. In the new games, they didn't really update the aiming all that well, but they made the characters harder to see. So I think that some of the stylistic choices that went along with the mechanics of older games, where they were handicapped by what they were making the games on, made the games better in certain aspects, and gave the developers more room to tweak that fidelity to work for the system they were making it on. Is kind of what I'm feeling, what I'm getting at.
That makes perfect sense. No, I completely get what you're saying. Alfredo, I want you in here.
Yes.
What I want to know your preference and kind of just weigh in on kind of the discussion on like frame rate versus revolution.
Sure. Yeah, so here's the thing. I've been listening to you console plebeians, talk about, fidelity, performance, which one should I choose? Well, as a member of the PC Master Race, I don't have to choose like you alluded to, Thomas, a little earlier, because,
Can we turn him off? How do we kick him from...
But here's the thing. Even though I have a PC that can do both and has ray tracing and all the stuff, I actually prefer to play on console. So when I got, my PS5, I was excited to be able to have the experience that I did on my PC, just on my preferred gaming station, which is the PS5 now. So as far as performance versus fidelity, since now I have to choose, I think we're at a point where we really kind of get both, even with the current generation PS5, because even on performance mode and fidelity mode, I cannot really tell the difference in certain games. The crystal clear, pixel perfect version that is fidelity mode versus the performance mode, which still looks very, very good and still looks almost indistinguishable to an untrained eye such as myself, but plays so much superiorly in terms of frame rate. The frame rate can't really be argued, because it's doubling the frame rate from 30 to 60 that I'm used to. So there's a clear difference.
And 30 to 60 is so jarring.
Right? Yeah, it's very
60
different.
60 to 120. While 120 looks good, it's not like that much of a difference to me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell it as apparent as 30 to 60. 30 to 60 is that big change.
Yeah, after a certain point, you get used to it, but at the same time, going 60 to 30, you notice it. You notice it's a little bit more cinematic, like you said. So
slower,
in most games, I do prefer performance. However, for the first time this year, I experienced a game that came out that I actually preferred fidelity mode, and that was with Ratchet and Clank. So with Ratchet and Clank, it's very, very high action, very speedy action. Gunplay is very, very fast. But when I was in performance, I noticed that I wanted a more cinematic feel. I wanted to feel like I was literally playing a Pixar movie. So I decided to switch back to fidelity mode for this game, and I enjoyed the gameplay of it so much more because it just felt a little bit natural for what that game was striving to be, which to me seemed like an interactable, like one of those kid-friendly movies, one of those. And to me, the fidelity mode suited the gameplay more than the performance mode that I usually like to play with. So with that game, kind of shifted my perspective on it. So now I'm kind of leaning on to, it's really up to the game and kind of what mood I want to set. With how I'm feeling with it. So it depends on the game, but if I had to choose, performance all the way.
I had the same, speaking of Insomniac, I had the same like reaction to Miles Morales, where
Really?
yeah, because and it leans more towards Taylor's way of thinking. Because yes, this game looks amazing with the performance. I can't argue it doesn't. I played a lot of it. I got a 200 plus combo on my performance mode. It's a better mode theoretically. But I played the original Spider-Man to completion at 30 frames per second. And so when I switch it back to fidelity mode, it's like I'm playing an upgraded version of that. And it just brings me back. So I agree that yes, technically like 60 will make the like I can't play it better on 30 for sure. Like I can't do the combos at the same rate. But I enjoy swinging around New York City way more at 30 because it's not just ray tracing with the fidelity mode for that game. It's also the lighting. It's also the amount of things on the screen as well. Because I've tested it. Like I literally will look at New York on both modes, and it's like
NPC density, that kind of stuff.
So it's like I do think it depends because that's not just resolution versus frame rate. That's also all the effects they can do.
Very true.
Which on PC is not really a thing. PC, it's more just resolution versus frame rate. You can, you know, with console, you might have a little different. It's kind of newer to consoles because we haven't really had that option in the past.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do agree with Taylor. It does depend on the game. For Miles Morales, it's just a nostalgic thing for me.
Well, that's fair. That's almost exactly what I'm getting at. Can I bring up a statement and see? I want to gauge each of your reactions on it. Good graphics do not a good video game make.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
I definitely agree. And I want to clarify what I was saying earlier too, because I don't think that a game is better because it runs at a better frame rate. Like I don't think that the GTA 5 remaster on PS4 is better than San Andreas just because it runs better and looks better. But I will say a 60 frames per second San Andreas, otherwise untouched, versus the original PS2 San Andreas, it's going to be the 60 frames per second San Andreas all the way because it's an objectively better experience because it's more responsive.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from that is first off, my bias is that mechanics make a game good. What I'm hearing from you to add on to that is that 60 frames per second increase the usability of some mechanics.
Totally. Right. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, just to clarify something, Ben, what's your history with San Andreas?
Not much. San Andreas for me is just we're just talking about it in the abstract.
Shooting.
You know, it's an example of a game.
Because you two are coming from different perspectives on it. Because he's coming from it, I played it when it came out. He has a nostalgia for how that game feels. Fair. And you're coming at it from you're interested in an upgraded version of it because you haven't played it yet. Or
I get that, but nostalgia is an argument for liking something that is objectively worse.
Yeah,
for sure.
So
for sure.
No, but if you told me so my agreement with that is basically if you told me that if you remastered San Andreas and the mechanics in the game just played better, stayed the same fun, but played more smoothly, then I absolutely agree with that. 100%. That is
right. That's what I was trying to get at when I said there is no game that wouldn't be improved by a higher frame rate. You know, assuming like every game that was 30 for totally arbitrary reasons, which it's not. It's because of of hardware limitations.
Right.
But assuming you could just crank all of those games up to 60 locked, or crank it to 120, every game would benefit from that. Every single game where you have to interact with the game, which is almost every game.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just a movie. And I think the only real argument that I understand, aside from nostalgia, which is its own pocket dimension in this argument, because it's just about like setting up the experience that I want to have based on the experiences that I've had before, which I totally understand and it's completely valid, but it's not about what's better. It's just about what's a better experience for you.
Right. More personal. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Aside from that, the only argument that I understand for a lower frame rate, which I don't agree with, which is that a lower frame rate is more cinematic. And the last time I heard this argument really made by any like developer was, I think, with the Order 1886, where they tried to make it like 24 frames per second because they wanted for it to be a more quote unquote cinematic experience. And while that is technically true, one, games aren't movies. They have different needs than movies do. And to mimic movies, this is a deeper argument, but to mimic movies for the sake of mimicking movies, I think is a foolish aim for video games, because you're always going to fall short of what movies are. They're a different medium. So either make a movie or do what games do, and do what games do well, which is allowing you to interact with them. And then if you're going to have people interact with them, be responsive to that interaction, which means as high a frame rate as you can hit reliably.
I disagree.
Sorry, let me just tie the knot on the cinematic argument, because film is actually capped at 24 for completely arbitrary reasons at this point. It started as a way to save money when film was shot physically. When film was actually shot on film and not digitally.
Yeah.
Movies were shot at 12 frames per second and then doubled. So you would see 24 frames per second. And that's why like all these old black and white Charlie Chaplin movies, he's moving super fast because he's moving twice as fast as they shot it.
Right.
Because they shot 12 frames, but 12 frames is not really enough for convincing motion. So then they double it, so you get convincing motion. So they're just running those 12 frames they shot per second in they combine 2 seconds worth of shooting into 1 second of playback. So they get 24 frames per second. And then film forever after has existed at 20 frames per second because of that original budget limitation on shooting these old movies. So for games to keep to that, because basically we're used to it. That's the argument, right? We're used to it. So we like it because we're used to it. I'm saying I was used to 30, and then I hit 60 with Demon Souls, and it shattered my brain, and I can't go back. Because 60 is better. It's just objectively better. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I guess, I think, I don't think a lot, in the case of The Order, it's a specific case because they literally were trying to make it cinematic, but I think where we are at now with video games is that we have the option because of what you said, because people are used to it, so they can switch over to the 30 frames just because it makes them feel a little bit more comfortable, is what they're used to, whatever the reason it may be. And I think that's fine. Like in my case with Ratchet and Clank, I usually performance mode 60 frames all the way, but in this specific case, I would switch over to 30 just because of whatever reason I want. And I think that it's, for video games in particular, I don't think it's necessarily bad for them to create the illusion that it's a movie. A lot of games are doing that now. It's kind of standard with really any PlayStation studios. The Last of Us, Uncharted, all of Naughty Dog's games, God of War, everything is trying to be this cinematic, new storytelling, but interactive game in quotes. And I just think that's a new artistic medium that I think is worth exploring. But with those games in particular, they are going the performance mode, the 60 frames by and large, as like the way to play, because like you said, it is an interactive game. This is a game, not a movie.
I shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because you're right. There are like things that you can import from film and TV that make a game better, certain storytelling techniques. But I think there are other things, such as adhering to 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second for the sake of a cinematic experience, that objectively make the game worse, and you're like chasing ghosts at that point to try to make your game fit into the cinematic model.
That's very.
Can I bring another medium into this discussion? Music, specifically Kanye fucking West, who I love. I love Kanye West.
You're in my wheelhouse now. What's going on?
All right. Kanye West recently released an album called Donda.
Yes.
And he released it and then updated it.
He patched it.
He patched Donda.
I think he's done this before.
Yeah,
He's
he
done this
has.
before. He's done this many times. He's a genius. But my argument is that, I'm only thinking about this because I actually like it when Kanye updates his music a lot of the times. I think he improves it. But I was listening to a Spotify playlist I made not long ago, and one of the songs that I really liked came up, and the artist had changed it. And he made it worse.
Here's the thing though. As a small artist,
Sure.
I love that. Because if you ask Prince, Michael Jackson, if they could update their
They could-
songs,
they
they'd
would.
all do it.
Absolutely.
There was no means to do that back then. That album came out on a CD and on the radio, and that's it.
Sure.
Now it's on streaming, where that is something you can do now.
But I think art is like a sexual relationship. You can't take it back. But you can do it again. That's what
That's metaphor of the year right there.
Good
Oh
shit.
man, simile
So-
actually, but man, that's a
No,
little-
I wish I had bought this artist's EP in vinyl of when it was available, even though I can't anymore. But then they went back and changed it on Spotify, and I don't like the song anymore. I genuinely don't like the song anymore because the intro is now 20 minutes fucking long.
Oh, and Donda.
And no, this is a different. I do think Kanye does it right. I think Kanye fixes his music for the right reasons. I still think it should be available to me, the art consumer, to choose which version of something I like the best. And I think that's what it comes to with games. And the games I'm thinking of in regards to this are things like Secret of Mana and or Banjo-Kazooie, where they are kind of in this limbo where Secret of Mana was remade but really poorly in 3D, and Banjo-Kazooie's never really been remade, but it still remains one of the better games that you think of. Not everyone, but
I
a
think
lot
that
of
runs.
people.
I think that actually runs at 60. If I'm remembering correctly.
Does it really, Banjo-Kazooie?
There are a lot of older games that run at 60.
Mhm.
I think most of the Mario games run at 60. I'm pretty sure, like
Really?
a lot of old platformers run at 60.
Huh.
What I
didn't
would
know
be
that.
interested, and now that you bring this up, Taylor, what I would be interested in something like Until Dawn or the House of Madan, Man of Medan, the House of Ash, which is about to come out. I do think that those would work better specifically on a 30 frames cap, because they are literally cinematic movies that you are making choices with and sometimes doing quick time events. So I could see the argument easily being made that it is better at 30 for those types of games as well.
I think I agree. I'm glad you agree with that for that sort of statement. But I think for some games like Banjo-Kazooie, I can't imagine myself playing at 60. I'll try for next week's episode. If you tell me 60 frame per second Banjo-Kazooie exists, I'll play it, and I'll let you know which one I prefer. Because personally, I'm sitting here thinking, like, as the consumer of the media of the art, I liked it at 60 frames. I think it flowed the best at 60 frames, and I think it looked the best at 60 frames. If you prove me wrong, that's fine. If you do a Kanye West and make the music somehow better, I'm all for it. But I think sometimes, and this isn't a grand overarching everything is like this sort of statement, but I think sometimes it's best to let the consumer of the art choose. Like, yeah, if you asked Prince if he wanted to change Purple Beret, he'd probably say, yeah, why not? I think I could have done this.
I missed a
lyric
note
better."
here. It wasn't mixed right here.
But then if you asked me, if you said, hey, do you like Prince's Purple Beret? I'd say yes. I think it's perfect. I won't stop listening to it over and over again. Please don't take it away from me. And I think media and art media has changed since we've moved away from like physical media, vinyls and tapes and VHSs, and we've moved to digital, and you can change it, you can update it. And I think sometimes it is better and sometimes it's not. And I think it's completely personal. I think that's the argument I'm going to make, is it's a personal choice. And I'm glad that if you'd prefer Banjo-Kazooie at 60 frames or San Andreas at 60 frames or whatever at 60 frames, play it. But I think I'd prefer it at 30 frames.
I'm gonna need Banjo-Kazooie at 240 frames per second.
Any last words before we end it there? This has been a great conversation, y'all.
Get a PC, you nerds.
Fuck
You won't have these problems, okay?
I don't believe it.
Are we
I
really
I don't own any
are we-
computers.
Are we really gonna end the podcast like that?
You tell me.
Oh man. Well, this has been another installment of the Dukes of Gaming podcast. You can find us all on our socials, linked below. We are coming at you every Saturday on Twitch. Follow us on Twitch, leave a comment. We will read your comment on air, as you see. So definitely leave some comments. Hit the bell on YouTube to get notifications on when we drop. We drop Mondays, sometimes Tuesdays for technical reasons sometimes, but expect us on Mondays. And besides that, it's been real. Thank you. I bid thee farewell. Just a little.